President Bola Ahmed Tinubu will lift the state of emergency in Rivers State as soon as normalcy is restored, the Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, has assured. The minister gave this assurance in an interview with press. As soon as he assesses that sanity has returned to Rivers State, he will ensure the restoration of all democratic structures in that state, he added. Idris assured that Tinubu remains committed to ensuring Rivers State returns to full democratic governance as soon as possible. The president will not wait a minute longer than necessary, he said. The minister emphasized that Tinubu had no intention of taking over the governance of the state or appointing a governor. The president has no intention whatsoever to take over the governance of Rivers State. He has no intention to be or to appoint a governor for Rivers State, he said. Idris defended the president's decision, describing it as a very responsible but very painful action taken in line with constitutional provisions. According to him, governance in Rivers State had completely broken down, with the assembly non-functional and the executive arm facing serious challenges. The way democracy is designed in this country is that the three arms of government must work together and one will be checking on the other. So we cannot have just the executive functioning and say we have a functional democracy. We didn't have that, and therefore the president had to act, he explained. The minister maintained that the president acted within his constitutional powers to prevent the state from descending further into violence and lawlessness. According to him, those who designed our constitution envisaged that this kind of situation could arise, and that was why they made the provision for it. The president relied on the constitution to exercise his powers and take action. We've been on the case of Rivers Emergency Rule, state of emergency for a while in Rivers State, and so many idea leaders have come in with their thoughts as regards if this is right, if this is constitutional. The NBA has a different stance from the Attorney General. What are your thoughts on this report?
Well, my sister, you know, Rivers State has been on the news for a very long time. I can say that actively for 16 months now. And my problem, the question I ask is, all of these leaders now that are speaking against the state of emergency declaration, where were they in all of these 16 months that Rivers State was in turmoil? That for 16 months that the legislative arm of the government is not functioning, and they don't see it as a threat to democracy. You know what it means? What it means that the former governor, Sim Fubara,
the suspended governor, you mean?
The suspended governor.
Right.
Yeah, Sim Fubara. I call him formal. I don't know why you're calling him. Well, anyhow.
He's a suspended governor. His tenure hasn't expired.
Okay, that is for you. For me, allow me to use my right words. Okay, the suspended, let me borrow your word, the suspended governor. It means that even the suspended governor declared a state of emergency on the legislative arm of government. Because he suspended them. He decided on who to recognize as legislators and who not to recognize as legislators. Is that democratic enough? Should a president watch that, assuming that is the only thing? We all know that. I am not here to defend the president. You see, what happens is that if you look at the college of people criticizing the state of emergency, you understand that they are mainly 98% of them were coming from opposition. And I don't know why.
Is the NBA an opposition?
The MBN.
The NBA.
Maybe they are the 2%. And who knows? I just said 98%. Maybe they are amongst the 2% that is left. I didn't say 100%. Meaning that there could be like 5% of them, like I said, who may. And I can tell you that of the 5%, if you blow it back, the 5%, if you blow it back to that, the 5% to 100% again, you will find out that 80% of them are people who just did it for sympathy or for something they don't understand, other than the law. Other than seeking, are you sympathizing with Fubara or sympathizing with the legislators, or you're sympathizing with the Rivers people who hasn't functioned for? It means that for 1 year we didn't function. Let me tell you why we didn't function. The court had declared that we didn't have an appropriation bill. What that means is that everything I've sounded it until we begin to look at this thing critically. I have sounded it clear here that it means that those who wrote WAEC under the sponsorship of Rivers State wrote illegally because the money wasn't appropriated for. It looks like the money was stolen and given to them. I'm being careful with words. If not, if you say this money and every thing that has to go along that side money, it becomes illegal. We are not looking at that. That in 20 years, in 30 years, criminal offense can be taken on with in court. And anybody can stand up to say, you took this salary or you paid this because of this. People didn't understand all of that. That, I ask, and God forbid that this scenario happens, assuming that the 27 lawmakers all died, and God forbid, assuming they died, what is the constitutional provision for? Should the governor go to recognize 3 persons as, will it form an assembly? The constitution does not provide for that. The constitution says until they are 1/3 of those who should be elected. And meaning that they are not even 1/3. What the governor would have done is to write the National Assembly to fill in the gap until there's an election to fill in those vacancies. That's number one. Then again, if you call about defections, the constitution, you know, I tell people that all of this scenario that is happening in River State is getting us to learn more about the facts, the reality, other than what to talk about sentiments and feelings.
Right.
Most of us may not understand it. You know, in this state, there used to be a time where if you were elected, don't forget that I was a member of the state working committee of the APC, and I also contested for the chairmanship of the APC. So I'm a politician, a core politician. I studied political science, and I have been in politics all my life. So it's not like I'm just coming in. I have watched certain things. There are things that we are learning newly. Number one, one of my shocker was when one late Ake was the PDP chairman in this state. And he was the PDP chairman up to 2-3 years until a court removed him and said Felix Obo was the PDP chairman. And on what ground did they remove him? The man didn't fill form in contesting election. Because we're used to all of those things, you know, when they adopt you, you just go ahead functioning. And the man who filled form said, I'm the one. And then they removed him. So if you were looking at that scenario from the eyes of sympathy or from the eyes of morality or feeling, you will say, we elected this person. We saw him being elected, isn't it? And we saw him act as chairman. Meanwhile, the foundation is faulty. The Bible says when the foundation is faulty, what will the righteous do? The foundation is faulty. So where would they take it? That means that he didn't exist in the eyes of the law. We saw an Omehia campaign round River State. You know, I was among the campaign. I was in fact the state officer to Omehia. We all campaigned. Omehia won as chairman. As governor. The court came and told us that in their eye, they didn't see Omehia. They were seeing Amechi. Amechi was in Ghana. We saw all of that happen. You see, what I said is that it's opening our eyes to something. When some of us came here and said, yes, that people came and declared that they have defected to another party, it's one thing. Another thing is that they even went and swore an oath, an affidavit, saying that they declared that. And some of us thought that was okay. But when we dug deep into it, we came here and told the world that that is not enough to become a party member or to defect. And what does it mean? You don't even need to go to media. All you need is to write your party, instead of defecting, and then go to a new party where you're defecting, and then register. Now in the court, the two parties, the APC has said we don't know them. The PDP said they are still our member. You who the onus is not on is saying they have defected, and the court is adjudicating for that, and there's a process of the court. And when the court is ongoing, a court of competent jurisdiction, the High Court, has said no, these people are still members of the board. So all you needed to be doing is to be working with them until such a time where the Supreme Court does otherwise. Instead, you said no, you are not going to recognize them. The High Court said it, so you said no. The Court of Appeal also said so. You said no, and they even said and told you that the appropriation bill you said you had was illegal. You are spending illegal money, and they say he said no. Then they went to the Supreme Court, and finally, the Supreme Court gave a verdict.
All right.
It gave a judgment. And listen, when the Supreme Court gave a judgment, one of the instruction on the Supreme Court judgment was that the local governments that we were campaigning, that it didn't happen at all, because where did the local government source their fund? Where did this source their fund? There are so many things that are being asked. So the Supreme Court went and looks at fact. They don't look at our emotions, our morality, all of that. It's about fact, And so the Supreme Court said no, this people didn't exist. And so you came immediately the next day. I'm talking about the suspended governor, quoting your word now. I'm talking about suspended governor. Just the next day, he addressed River State and said, well, the chairman, his own chairman, should leave, vacate the office, for this thing. And then when the when the legislator asked him to come in 48 hours, he said he is still studying the Supreme Court judgment. Now, when did you study the Supreme Court judgment to give that order to your local government chairman? The same judgment. Where did you have it? Which CTC did you have it to just do that? What am I saying is that, assuming without conceding that all of a sudden you did all of that and then the Supreme Court came on board and then did that, what should have been expected of you is to immediately swung into action. That's number one. Number two is, we all know it's a notorious fact in this state. When people are talking from outside, I said, do you really know these things? We all know that it's a notorious fact that part of the threat that was ongoing is that should sin be touched by impeachment, by a process of the law, that they are going to blow oil pipeline. It was a notorious fact. Everybody knew that. That's a threat to national economy and security.
You mean the threats that were being aired on television? The threats that were being aired on social media?
Both social media and all of that. See, the intelligence community.
So now I want to ask you.
Yeah.
Having gotten this intelligence report as regards, stuff wanting to be blown out and
sure,
the piece of Niger Delta wanting to be disturbed, do you think that, these people did these videos through a phone? It was aired through a channel.
Yeah, sure.
We have all our BVN and all our things submitted as usual. Do you think those people would have been tracked, arrested, investigated, as opposed to the call of the state of emergency?
Now, let me tell you. There is, you see this toga, the, what is it that exists between the governor? I'm talking about the immunity that surrounds a governor. Now, that immunity, I'm not supposing that. I'm not saying that's what happened. That immunity also has a way of governor, certain government being compromised and hiding the people. I can tell you that. I've been in government. I know what I'm talking about.
Can a governor hide someone from?
Yes, of course. Yes.
Can a governor hide someone from the federal government?
Yes. Let me tell you why.
Okay.
There is the bombing of the legislative house that happened. The assembly came and named the person who bombed this thing, and the police declared the person wanted. The person went to government house and stayed. Because the government has it covered. If they go and do anything and then bombard the government house and begin to take, they'll say, oh, no. The immunity, the governor, they are harassing the governor. So most times, you see that those things, when you want to get to the root of intelligence, you remove certain persons to get the root of intelligence. It's not just for the person. Now, again, after the Supreme Court, the suspended governor went for in one activity, and look at what he said. And I'm saying I listened to it, I saw him. He said this. He said, the youth, just stay. Just keep quiet. As soon as it is time, we'll call you. Let me tell you what that means. He could have been saying that innocently to say, keep quiet. Maybe. I'm not saying that.
The first part of the speech, you say, become.
That is what I'm saying.
Right.
When you say, become, we will call you. What does that mean? See, if you say, Jonathan one time said, I don't want my ambition. I don't want anybody's blood to be shed because of my ambition. He's been emphatic. He's telling you, please don't do anything. That's what he's saying. As soon as Jonathan owned up the victory of President Buhari, immediately he said, please nobody should fight for me. Those are emphatic. When the governor begins to say, don't worry, keep calm until we call you, what does that mean? What are you saying? What are you telling the youth? See, the youth understands things, and there are people who will say, okay, let's see. And they were threatening, and the threat is conditioned on whether there's going to be impeachment or all of that. And then all of a sudden, why the people invited the governor said it wasn't going to, it was on social media. The governor also went to them. And I was like asking one time that the governor went to the House of Assembly and they said governor didn't enter. And I said, how is the process of governor? How does governor go to the assembly? The governor writes the clerk of the house. And then the speaker invites the governor. And then they wait for the governor and take the governor into the chambers. The governor does not happen on the chambers like that. So people should understand that. And the people have come to say, tell us whom you gave. Right through our clerk. Meanwhile, the governor has his own clerk that he recognizes as clerk. Who does that? That is not democracy. That for 16 months, these legislators were not paid. In fact, even the worst hit of this emergency is the legislators. Because they were not paid. All of a sudden, again, you have suspended them also. That's the worst hit.
But now, given that everybody's horses are still gunned, even after the Supreme Court judgment, right? The Assembly said they did write a letter to the governor to show up in 48 hours.
Yes.
The governor said the official channel of communication is to write letters.
That is what I'm saying. The people said they wrote letter, gave it to. Don't forget that their relationship is not like the way it was before. Now, so the people said we wrote a letter and registered it and sent it through Korea. That went there, and of course also published it at the newspaper. There are so many channels you can get to this people. Did he publish that he was going to come? And of course he can't even also publish and just go, because the speaker must accept him. But in his own case, it's not like that. If they had published it, so where did they get that information that they reacted? Now that they said they didn't get, because they should have also had kept quiet. Now, apart from even keeping quiet, the Supreme Court has made it expressly clear. Please go and submit your budget. Now, let me tell you what happens. When all of this weren't happening, it was obvious that the legislators were not going to cooperate with the governor, and the governor was not going to cooperate with the legislators. It was very obvious. In fact, they were doing, in fact, like that day when the governor went there, I was like, this is like looking like a student. If a first student university can do that, it's looking like one. Let me not, because I go to motor park, I don't have a car, so that I don't go to motor park and say you're staying at a motor park thing. It's looking like a motor park thing. How can the governor begin to do that? And all of a sudden, you mean the president should watch? Remember, don't forget, that the president had intervened earlier on. The president had intervened earlier on, called all of them, and said, hey, my brother, this, and they had what they call 8-point agenda. And each of those items, the president will call them. Did you people accept that? They will say, yes, it's okay. Number 2 item. Lead. Did you accept that? Yes. And then all of them came and signed. I am not saying something. Sometimes you can sign a thing and go back to study it, and then come back to say, no, I wouldn't have signed this thing. The onus is on you, who is executive, who has access to the president, to move to the president and say, President, yes, this 1, 2, 3. I think we need to come back to 2, 3, 4. And then they call back the people and say, no, this one or this one, no. Instead, you funded those who call themselves, quote unquote, elders to go to court against the president. The president don't have constitutional right to intervene. Do you need a constitutional right, assuming that is, if you're not even the president, do you need a constitutional right to intervene? And then the elders do have the constitutional right to intervene. What has these elders done all this while to cop this thing? And what is the state of emergency, for instance? What are they talking about, the state of emergency? The man has just said, okay, suspend them and let there be peace. Yeah. And we can use this window. I think that those elders, like the former president, Goodluck Jonathan, and all of that, who is somehow from here, because of course Bayelsa is here, he's also married to here. I think that this was the time that they were, but all of a sudden these elders are also culpable because they have taken sides. And so what would they do? So they are taking sides and they are not supporting those sides. The president has declared this. If you see witness, there is calm in Rivers State.
Now, when we talk about the state of emergency, according to that section 305, when and what needs to happen for a state of emergency to be declared?
You see, there are in section 305, subsection 3, right, that we have A, B, C, D, E. Okay. And it must not be a community of that before you can state. Each of them have the capacity of making you declare, because they were or this, or this, right, or this. In that, if you look at D, if you look at E, if you look at F, you know the president has a threat to national security. And these people have said it. You've seen that there were bombs.
But what is the time frame from when this bombing happened to when the state of emergency was declared?
The president should have waited.
What I mean is, the state of emergency, like you said, is constitutes of all the things on ABC.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
Or at least one or H.
Yes.
Right. Now, the bombing, we had it, let's say it was on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
By Tuesday evening, a state of emergency was declared. Why do you think the route of the curfew wasn't used first, as regards, we are talking about safeguarding lives and properties?
No.
Right. And every other tenant to at least avert the problem first, then thinking of how to arrest it, given that it was in a few hours. You would agree with me, it was in a few hours.
It was in days.
It was in days?
Yes, of course.
How many days did what day did the bombing happen? The bombing happened, let me say it was on the Monday night and the Tuesday morning or thereabout. Well, when we got wind of the news.
Yes.
By evening of that Tuesday, like I'm saying, the president had declared a state of emergency.
That is what I'm telling you now. You know what people like is, 1 million of us should die then before they declare a state of emergency. Don't forget that this bombing wasn't just something that happened without a pre-threat, using that word, without a threat that has gone before. There have been incessant threats that should this happen, this will happen. Should this happen, and this happen. And just don't forget, as soon as the assembly gave a notice of impeachment to the governor, don't forget, gave a notice, that's when the bomb started detonating. Meaning that they have now made real their threat. And so no government, no responsible government will wait until one person is dead first before you now begin to come in. And of course, when they say 6 months, like I tell people, do you know that this state of emergency can be cut short in the next 1 week?
Right.
It depends on our approach. But when we begin to argue whether it was right or all of that, the president has submitted the same to the National Assembly, and the National Assembly has passed it, so it is now legal to say it's unconstitutional. I don't know who is saying unconstitutional. Because in the IC, what makes constitute threat is not just what you see. You see, the president has intelligence in Rivers State on a daily and hourly basis. And to say that, look, if you don't do this, these people, maybe the assembly or maybe the governor, will be protecting these persons. And he's the chief security officer of the state. And so all he needed is to remove them a little bit and then force it. How come they're not detonating the bombs again? How come they can't do it again? Because somebody has. So because they are, quote unquote, their protector is gone. That's just it. People should understand that. We must, because what we see, we don't take a proactive step here. We react. We take a reactionary step. So when people are died, when things are started happening, oh, this thing happened on Tuesday, so a government should just, you had threatened that kind of thing, and you have said, and you are making real your threat. Enough. One is enough to say stop and let us see it, and let us take a holistic view and begin to combat it head on. That's what the president did. I am not for the president. I'm not, in fact, I don't work for the president. But I can tell you that anybody who really understood what was happening in Rivers State will not just know that we were sitting on the gunpowder. In Rivers State, something was going to happen. We were in Rivers State when how many bombs have been detonated to, of course, that the assembly was bombed. We saw APC secretariat, we saw APP secretariat, we saw certain thing. All those things were happening all this where. When did, tell me that, okay, now, do you know, as soon as that bomb went off, the first thing the governor will do is to address the state immediately, that one. Because it is security. To say, look, anybody who is doing that, this and that and that and that and that and that. Yeah.
I want to ask you something.
Yes, sir, please.
Has there ever been a time when these things happen, and now I'm talking about
bomb.
I'm talking about the precedent of how things have gone in Nigeria over time.
Yeah.
Has there ever been a time when something happened immediately, any governor or any president come out to address it immediately? Has there ever been a time?
If it hasn't been, I wouldn't, because I am not, I do not know everywhere, but if it doesn't...
For example, I'll
yes.
give you an instance. There's been a video parading all over social media, and it contained sad video of some soldiers being killed. Till today, I saw the video maybe last week. Nobody has addressed that. Now, what I'm asking is, has there ever been a time when...
Now,
you understand what I'm trying to
ask?
I
do. Let me... This is the problem we all have.
Because do you know why I asked you this?
Please do.
The reason I ask you this is, I feel like this incident had just happened prior to the announcement of the state of emergency.
It didn't just happen. That is why I said it has a background. It's just making real the threat. It just have a background. I've told you that. See, first let me address the A before
the B.
This one.
Yeah.
Now the A is this. We are too used to government not being proactive, and so we feel it's okay. We are just too used to it. For instance, somebody will tell me, when Wike or Amechi was governor, after all, they can just stand up and appoint caretaker committee chairman of local government, or they can just stand up and announce a local government election and its head, and then they win in court, and then they said, so how come is this person? And I tell them, look at the scenario. Let me tell you something that happened. I'm a family person.
Okay.
When you are at peace with your wife, the house is less expensive. That I know.
Okay.
Because you know, when you're at peace, you can just say, honey, please, this 2,000 let's manage it. And she, okay, what do we do? You know, 5,000 let's manage it. But if there is problem, then you will know that sugar is finished, or salt is finished. This one gas will go off, the other one will go off, and they are real. It's not like she is bringing all of them out because she doesn't want to sympathize with you. The real thing should be done. Since you say you're a man, the house will become no wonder some of us, as soon as we know that those kind of things, we make sure that we count the situation before morning. We do that. And so the same way in the legislative in the government.
Right.
Now when a government is working with a legislator, in fact most times you see the governor, I was on air, I am one of the highest critic of Wike. And there was a time I was on air asking for the budget of Rivers State. Want to see the budget of Rivers State? I was asking for the budget of Rivers State. But you know, the onus of those who need to see the budget is this legislator. So the legislator can tell you, we have the budget. How is that their business? Oh, did we pass the budget? No, people have not passed the budget. No, we have passed the budget last 3 months.
So you're saying all of this has happened because of the scenario that we've had in
the relationship. You know, if you have a relationship, there are certain things that the governor will do, and he will go back to call the assembly, please. You know, I was thinking Wike was a very strong man as governor, and then you know, like I'm going to say it on air for the youths. So don't mind us when we quarrel on air. We can meet informally and still joke.
Right.
You know, I was one of the highest critics of Wike. So I went to a friend of mine lost his wife. You know, he's a legislator. Then I don't want to mention his name. So I was in his house, and then Wike came. Do you understand? And Wike came. When Wike came to that place to see him, okay, Wike said, my assembly, sorry sir. And that is a strong man. That's a strong man, quote unquote. He says, sorry sir. He came, they say, you are with cheese, your masla. Our own. He said, cheese is my friend. He said, this cheese that is fighting us. So when they were doing, he said, please sir, I need to leave you now because I'm going to A, B, C of legislators. So why is he doing those informal visits? I thought he was so strong. That means that he was doing his informal thing. Like I'm using the family scenario. Some of us will come and say, you go to somebody's house and you see that the wife and him are having issues. The wife, it looks like the wife, quote unquote, are not respecting him. And then you come to your own house and the guy said, oh, you're wonderful. One of my friends told me, Cheesy, you know, if I had married their wife, I would have been fatter than. Meanwhile, all that had happened in his house happens in my house, but I manage it differently.
Thank you so much for your insight on that report.